Hey, everybody. Good to see you all tonight. I'm a follower of Jesus who's helping me walk through my grief and grow in my joy, and my name is Tanya. Hey, welcome and thanks for coming out. Good to have you all here for tonight's lesson on how to use the inventory sheets. This tool we're going to talk about tonight is a really powerful tool in our recoveries if we do not hesitate to use it. Now, those of you that are in a 12-step right now, you're already in the middle of or starting and beginning your inventory process, doing your 4-step and your 12-step journeys. So you're learning how to fill these sheets out. And as a matter of fact, I just did some training with them a couple of weeks ago and gave them some of my own samples, which was more on the serious side that I worked with them. Tonight, we're going to be doing a more lighthearted version and approach on filling out these sheets. Now, for those of you who've already taken a 12-step in the past, you may or may not remember how to use them. So I hope our class tonight is a good refresher course in case you've gotten out of practice. And then if there's people in here that have not been able to participate yet in a 12-step and you're like, well, what do I do? Just listen and learn and absorb what you can, because if you continue in the journey and you take a 12-step next year, everything you've learned and gained this year is just going to help make more sense when it comes time to do it next year. So you can still learn from it, gain the understanding, so when you move into that part of the process and journey, you will be better equipped. So these sheets, I just want to remind you, they're not meant to be only used for your 4-step as well, but as a super helpful tool throughout the year to help you keep working your recovery and your action plans going year round. So this is a tool that we can use all the time, but it begins for us for the first time when we learn how to use it in our 12-step. In Psalm 139, 23 and 24, it says, "Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." I believe when we use these inventory sheets, God's helping us to examine our ways, show us where we're blowing it, while helping us to implement new everlasting change into our life. They also help us to identify if we have allowed our past experiences to define, destroy, or develop us. You know, I didn't even realize how unaware I was of that fact until I began working on my recovery 15 years ago here in CR. I discovered I had allowed many of my past experiences to define how I was living in the present, and I learned I had to pause more to reflect and consider my choices before I just acted out of my past patterns that I had learned and grew up with. I also noticed how much I allowed the lies and false beliefs to destroy and erode my self-worth. I had to do a lot of work over the years to learn how to replace the lies and false beliefs with God's truths. And the cool thing is, God transforms us as we work our recovery, because God is in the transformation business, and business is good. Yeah. Copied that from my preacher I heard on Sunday I was listening to. He wasn't too bad. Couldn't tell a joke for his life depended on it, but he gave a great positive message. So I copied that line. Anyhow, on that note, let's jump in to our lesson tonight and go over by first reading tonight's principle and step, which is principle 4, openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. Matthew 5:8 says, "Happy are the pure in heart." Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And Lamentations 3:40 tells us to let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. So before we begin to write our inventories, one of the things we're going to have to do is take a brief trip down memory lane so we can begin to make a list about what we're going to need to write about. I would encourage you to start that out by praying about it and asking God who should be on that list, and then just writing it down. You can also write down about positive or negative experiences. And in case you're wondering how positive experiences can lead to unhealthy patterns, I do have a really quick example from a man who came through CR years ago, because he had a positive experience when he was in elementary school, and I call his story the chocolate milk dilemma. This guy was in 4th or 5th grade at the time when the school administration came to the kids and said they were doing away with the chocolate milk at lunchtime. I know, I thought the same thing. How dare they mess with the children's happiness at school, right? Well, this guy and his friends, they were very unhappy. As a matter of fact, the kids all took up a petition to bring the milk back, got enough signatures, submitted it to the school administration, demanding the return of their chocolate milk. And you know what happened when they turned their petitions? They got their chocolate milk back. You know what else happened? he became the coolest and most popular kid in school. He got so much praise, so much kudos, slaps on the back. And you know what that did? He made him realize he liked how it felt to be a rescuer when he could fix problems and make other people happy. So at first, the story sounds really harmless, but he then went on to tell us more stories about his adult life. His testimony was filled with stories of how he repeated the same behavior of rescuing others by attempting to fix their problems. Sadly, most of the time, he failed. And when there was no success, no praise, no attaboys, no kudos, no slaps on the back, he began to struggle deeply within on how to face his growing guilt, disappointment, and shame that he turned to alcohol to numb it all. So when he did his inventory, God showed him where this pattern of rescuing and fixing began back with the chocolate milk dilemma. And it helped him to see how he had become addicted to wanting those good feelings again, and that came from fixing and rescuing others. He realized he had enough problems of his own to deal with, like his drinking, and that he needed to surrender other people's lives and problems to God's care and control. So the whole moral of the story here is be sure to write about anything impactful that you believe God is bringing to your mind, even if it's good or bad, that are tied to the issues you're working on. So now that you got your list started, we're going to jump into the fun beginning of learning how to fill out these sheets. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing a personal example with you of a very painful rejection story that I had personally gone through. But before I get into it, if I could get Dave and Stephen and Matt, can you help Dave pass these out? I got handouts that are going to be passed out to you. Please don't open it and start looking through it. I want to keep us all on the same page, and we're going to go through this together. So I don't want anybody to get lost or confused. So if you just keep it closed, I appreciate it. And then I'll let you know when to, or what pages to turn to. I will tell you the first 3 pages are just a reminder of how to do this, because I'm going to throw out a lot of information at you tonight, and you're like, I'm not going to remember all of that, so that's okay. I wrote it all out for you. So that's what the first 3 pages are. But just hold on to that when you get it, and then I'll tell you when to change the page. Well, before I begin, though, I first want to tell you my main painful rejecter in my life was my cat, Cuddles. He was the culprit. Yes, he's my kitty cat, and he is impossible to live with unless you're fortunate enough to be Dave. Like I said, a humorous example how my cat snubbing me makes me feel rejected. And let me just say right here, right now, no, I do not expect you to go home and write inventory sheets on your pets. Again, my hope is that we can kind of laugh together as we sort through my rejection issues, and that this humorous approach is just going to make anybody who's nervous or feeling intimidated about this part of the process, hopefully to relax a little more, just so you can give it your best shot. Again, I know how hard and scary these sheets are. I've been through it. I've done a number of them over the years. So I'm just trying to make it a little less stressful and intense with some humor. So that's all we're doing here, okay? So I don't want anybody get it crazy on my example with using an animal. So anyway, first thing you're going to do before we begin is, like I just mentioned, you got to make a list. You got to have a list that you start about who you're going to write about. And keep it open. Always keep it next to you when you're working on your inventory sheets, because I can promise you right now, when you're in the middle of working an inventory sheet, a problem or person or a past experience is going to pop into your head, and you're like, should I write about that? Don't sit there and dwell on it. Just go write it down on your piece of paper, add it to your list, come back, figure it out later. You don't need to figure it out right then. Get back to concentrating and finishing that inventory sheet you're working on, and you can go back and finish later looking at your list. So now what I need everybody to do is to turn to page 4. We're going to hit the first column. We're walking through the columns together. So hit page 4 on the handout, and you're going to take that person's name off your list, and you're going to put it in this column, and then we're going to work our way across together the best we can. So as you can see in my first column, I wrote my cat, Cuddles. Now, another thing you might write in this column, especially if you're writing about your parents, is you might mention the time of your life, because you have a lot of history with parents, right? They raised you, and so you might write childhood, you might write teen years, you might write college age, or 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever the age range, to help you just keep your timeline organized as you're writing out the experiences you went through with people in your life throughout your life. So it's kind of helpful to put an age range in there, time period. So you can do that there just to help you stay organized with your timeline. So next, turn to the next page. We're going to go to column 2, and that's the column where we're going to write about what happened. We got to keep it short. We got to keep it concise, because as you can see, this column is not very big. As a matter of fact, it's really, really narrow, and it's that way on purpose, because the point of writing about what happened is not to get into our graphic details or the specifics of everything that happened. We need to write enough to make ourselves aware, but not get into the specifics, so we don't take ourselves down into a vague place or bad place. Now, one thing we got to watch out for is, again, at the same time, I don't want you to be too graphic, but I don't want you to be too vague either. So a good example is if you were to write, my father was an alcoholic, that's too vague. It doesn't tell us what happened. But if you write, my dad said degrading things to me when he was drunk, that describes an act. And you don't have to rehash it by reminding yourself of all those degrading things he said. It's not necessary. Writing down, as he said, degrading things is enough. So I don't want you going down, writing down the details, take yourself down a dark path, because you're going to cause yourself unnecessary pain. And it can get you stuck in your past, and that's not the purpose of this journey. So as you can see from my example, I kept it short and focused. You can also see I did list multiple issues with my cat Cuddles, and I just did that to give you examples and samples of ways I could have wrote it, but you really only want to write one what happened per page. You don't want to list multiple things that happened with the same person per page. You want to move and give everybody a sheet for the person and what happened. So, but I just did this for tonight, for the sake of tonight, to give you some examples. So what happened with the rejection events, I wrote down, he sits on Dave's lap and begs for attention from him. He always goes and sees Dave in his office every single morning, and he follows and watches Dave everywhere he goes. Now that I described what Cuddles does to make me feel snubbed and rejected at home, I'm going to move on. Oh, wait, I got proof of my pain. Look, see what I mean? This is me sitting at my desk. Dave's just standing there, and the cat's rubbing up against him. It is so wrong, because he doesn't do that to me. Can you feel my pain? Can you feel my pain? All right, now you can turn the page to go to column 3. I want to tell you right here, column 3 and 4 is where God shows us great insight into our insanity cycles and how they're driving us to do what we do. And I'm going to come back to this in a minute and explain a little bit more. But in column 3, we're going to write down now what happened, how what happened made us feel. So now that we wrote out what happened in column 2, column 3 is about 2 things: writing out how it made us feel and how it made us, what did it make us think and believe. And I want to mention, if you struggle with naming or identifying your emotions, don't forget, for those of you in the 12-step right now, go back to your packet I handed out to you 2 weeks ago. There's a feelings prompt sheet in there that you can go back and use to help you identify maybe the feelings you had that you're just struggling at putting a word to. I know I grew up in a very abusive home. I wasn't allowed to express myself or my feelings or my thoughts. So when it came time for me to do probably my first 2 or 3 inventories, I had to use a feelings prompt sheet a lot because I couldn't think of the words to put to my feelings back then. So feel free to use that if you need to. They're really helpful. Now, as you can see, I wrote down I felt rejected, unloved, and resentful. And then after I identified how I felt by Cuddles' rejection, I wrote down how those feelings caused me to think or believe about myself. And as you can see from my example, I put down Cuddles, per reference, is of Dave, had me thinking and believing that he doesn't like me, and I should have return him and pick a different cat. And as you can see for my secret cat cam, I caught them, busted them, hanging out doing a project together and unnecessary socializing when I'm not around. And Dave did not even have cat treats, and he's up there monitoring his work. I'm just saying, a proof for real people what I'm living with. I'm ignored and kicked to the curb at home. All right, so enough of my cat drama. We're going to come back and visit this column in a moment. There's more to learn from column 3. It's actually a really insightful column, but we're going to move on to column 4, which is the next page in your handout. In this column, we're going to describe what our reactions were. How did we act out? What did we do when what happened to us? Did we run, isolate, blame, stuff, ignore, argue, turn to porn, alcohol, food, shopping, gambling, drugs, blow up, steal, cheat, hold a grudge, stew in resentment? As you can see, there are many behaviors, and I'm only naming a few. We are plenty resourceful enough to find ways to act out when we're struggling. And what did you do? You're going to write it out here. You're going to write down what you did in this column. And remember, this column is about what you did, not what they did. We already addressed what they did, right, in column 2. This is about what did you do when you acted out on the situation. And as you can see from my example with Cuddles, my reactions at home have been wanting to ignore Cuddles, blame Dave for his secret cat fest, and making Cuddles reject me. And I demanded that Dave stop playing with Cuddles and ignore him. And when those things didn't work, I resorted to bribery to buy Cuddles love and attention by offering him kitty treats in the form of temptations or catnip.
You call it kitty crack.
I do call it kitty crack, yes. And he likes it a lot. But it didn't change anything. What did I learn? All my controlling and blaming ways didn't change Dave and Cuddles' love fest. As a matter of fact, all the blaming did was keep me from owning my part or from working on what I needed to change. Blame kept me stuck in a poor reaction instead of moving me forward towards a positive outcome. So we need to watch out for the blame game or we can get stuck. Now, before we move on to column 5, what I want to address here now, because I mentioned it already, columns 3 and 4 really help us to see our insanity cycle. You can see what my feelings were when I felt rejected. You can see what I thought and believed about myself when I felt rejected. And then you can see how I acted out by becoming controlling and blaming as a result of the rejection. That's my insanity cycle. So whenever I get triggered with rejection and I find myself having experienced the same feelings, the same thoughts and beliefs, we automatically develop these patterns that come out of our feelings and thoughts that we just move right into without thinking what our reactions are going to be. And so that's why this part of the inventory sheets is so powerful, because you're going to start noticing what your patterns are. You're going to start noticing when you feel and think a certain way, you just have certain reactions. You didn't even notice, you just did them automatically. Well, now we're becoming aware of that pattern. Now we're beginning to understand, where does that pattern come from? Oh yeah, these thoughts and feelings over here, these things I'm thinking about myself over here make me want to act out this way. And that's why column 5 is so amazing and powerful, because column 5 is where we're going to develop a new action plan. So we can stop living out of column 4, stop reacting out of column 4, and move into doing what God wants us to do, which is what we're going to work through in column 5. So now that I've kind of shared and explained that a little bit, go ahead and turn the page. Let's go to column 5. And in column 5, you're going to answer 4 questions. And these questions will help to create an action plan for change and overcoming. So the first question is, what part am I responsible for? And I will tell you, when I especially began doing these, probably for my first 3 or 4 12 steps, I really struggled answering this first question, what part am I responsible for? I was so codependent. I really struggled separating my stuff from other people's stuff, and I didn't know how to do that. So I did kind of learn a way, and I'm just going to share it with you. If you like it, you can use it. If you got a different way, that's fine too. But I learned I had to separate what the other person was responsible for from what I was responsible for. So this is how I typically answered that one. I wrote, I am not responsible for Dave and Cuddles' love fest, but I am responsible for my feelings and reactions to it all. Writing this out like this helps to remind me I'm not responsible for what Cuddles does, but I am responsible for how I feel and act out on it. So I just want to take and put my humorous example aside for a moment, because I need to address something very serious here too at the same time, because a lot of you have been abused, and that's going to be addressed in these sheets as if you've gone through abuse. And I want you to know that when you come to this question about what is your part, your answer to abuse, I don't care what kind of abuse it was, is always going to be not guilty. You're going to write not guilty down, big, bold letters. That's always going to be your answer. You're never responsible for abuse that happens to you. So not guilty is your answer if you've been in an abusive situation. And you're going to write that down. Now for your part, and there's 2 things to consider here. If you were a child when that abuse happened, it's not guilty. You're done with that question. Move on to number 2. But if you were a teenager or older, then you got some more to add on here, because when you became a teen, when we all became a teenager, we got to start making some of our own decisions and choices, right? We got to make some of our own choices how we're going to act out or live. Some of us just, when we got into high school or some as early as junior high, started drinking and smoking drugs or taking drugs or smoking pot or ditching school or acting out, who knows, being promiscuous, whatever it was. And that was our choice. None of our parents sat there with a gun to our head saying, this is what you got to do right now, right here. So there is a certain point where we're going to answer that question. I am not responsible. I am not guilty of the abuse, but I am responsible for the choices I made during this time in my life. And so that's where I will then address what I did as a teenager, because I did all those things, drinking, and I was promiscuous in high school, but that was my way of coping and living. My parents or abusers at home made me do it, but doesn't mean I was acting out in a healthy way. I wasn't, but it was how I was coping, and that was my choice. So we're going to write down that even though I'm not responsible for abuse, I am responsible how I acted out back then. And that's all you're done with that question. Now we're going to come back to my examples, and we're going to move on to question 2 in this. Is there anyone I owe forgiveness or amends to? And I'm going to give you a clue of how to tell by looking at your inventory sheets if there's someone you need to forgive. So if you listed any of your feelings in column 3 where you mentioned resentment, anger, unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, jealousy, or wanting revenge, those are some really big red flags that there's a person you may need to forgive. Now, if you caused the hurt and you wrote having feelings of like guilt, shame, remorse, or regrets, those can be red flags that you need to ask God for forgiveness, and then work on forgiving yourself so you don't get stuck in a self-condemnation cycle. And then you can work on your amends you need to make. Don't worry about how or when to make your amends or offer forgiveness right now. It is only important at this moment of doing your inventory sheets, you write down that you acknowledge that you're aware that amends or forgiveness is coming, or both, if depending on the person's situation. In a couple months, we're going to have the amends and forgiveness lesson. We're going to dig deep into this topic and explaining how to do healthy amends and healthy forgiveness. And the other reason I want you to wait for those lessons is for those of you who've had abusers in your life. A lot of people get fearful because they think when they do the inventory and they write about their abusers, that means they're going to have to forgive them. They're going to have to go confront them and have a face-to-face meeting with them, and that's not the case. We're not going to ask you to do anything that emotionally, physically, or mentally could be harmful to you. And that's why we want you to wait. We want to prep you for how you walk through that part of the process and do it in a healthy way, not to cause yourself more harm, and to help you figure out what is the best way for you to approach that and when. So I'm just giving you one example. I don't have enough time to get into the forgiveness lesson here tonight. I just wanted to give you one tidbit of information there so you can understand why it's important to wait and just acknowledge at this point you realize you need to make amends or forgive somebody, and you're going to come back to it. There's another reason why I want you to wait till we get to this lesson before taking action. And when I go back to my example, and as you can see from mine, I acknowledged that I needed to make amends with Dave for my bad attitude towards him. I mean, he can't help it if he's a manly man, cat, babe, magnet. What can I say? Cats love him. I left it there. And so it just is what it is. So sometimes people are who they are, and I just had to learn to get over it. So I am working on and going to make amends with him, and I'm going to come back to that because that'll be part of my action plan. And then we're going to move on to question 3, because this is a really important question. Are there any lies that we need to replace with truth? And this question is going to tell us a lot about what we're listening to in our head. What are the broken records going on up there that we're out of touch with? And to answer this, we got to go back to column 3, and we're going to take a look at what we wrote under thoughts and beliefs. And we're going to read what we wrote there, and we're going to ask God, is what I was thinking or believing true or a lie? And he's going to let you know. It's going to be very crystal clear, very quickly. And many times I've discovered I was listening to false beliefs or lies. And if you discover you've been doing the same, then we would answer, yes, it's a lie. And then we're going to write out what the truth is. Now, sometimes the truth is just reframing our lie. It's just changing it from being a lie to an actual truthful comment or statement. Sometimes we got to replace the lies or beliefs with a Bible verse that tells us what the truth is. And then we need to memorize the verse, so when our lies or false beliefs pop back up, which they will come back, they will happen, they will show up in us again, we know the truth now. And now we can stop listening to our faulty lies and beliefs because we have either reframed them or replaced them with new scriptures. We just got to remember to recall that, go to our action plan and grab it if we don't remember what our verse is, and pull it out and read it again and remind ourselves. So now in my example with Cuddles, and I'm having fun with you all by showing you some proof of my why I believed what I believed with Cuddles rejecting me and how I convinced myself he preferred Dave over me. But the truth was, when I went back and I looked through all the pictures over the years we've had Cuddles, I can say that my beliefs were not totally accurate. When I paid better attention to Cuddles, I also noticed he was doing things like he would visit me in the morning when I was making my coffee. When he's hungry, he will follow me around. And sometimes, occasionally, he hangs out on my desk when I'm working from home. His attention may not be the same as what he was given to my husband, Dave, but it wasn't as horrible as I was told myself. So that's kind of reframing my truth, the lie that I was telling myself, he doesn't like me. And so I rewrote it. I wrote, just because my cat prefers Dave doesn't mean he doesn't like me. He comes to me when I'm making coffee, when he's hungry, or stays by me at my desk. So when we begin to replace the lies or false beliefs with truth, this is going to help us change our perspective as we stop allowing our broken records to run the show of how we think and feel. With God's help, we have the power we need to change and to take our thoughts captive. God is in the thought-changing business, and business is good. That's right. So if you struggle to reframe the lies or replace the false beliefs from God's word, ask your sponsor for help. If your sponsor doesn't know, you can talk to Dig or I. We're happy to help you guys. We filled out so many of these over the years. There's help here. We're here to support you and guide you if you need it. So just let us know. And then last but not least, we have our action plan. And this is the final last question in column 5. And this is all we're doing in this one. Oh, I'm sorry. This is one of my proofs of my pictures. Look at him. He's on my desk looking at me. Does that look like a cat that doesn't like me? Not at all, right? That's a cat that likes me. I'm looking at this picture and I'm like, yeah, that's a kitty that likes me. What am I saying, you know? He's probably begging for food, but anyway. So with the action plan, we're going to summarize how we answered questions 1 through 3 and for our 4th question, and write out our summary of what we learned, and maybe we add on to it even additional work we may need to do. So my first action was to make amends to Dave for blaming him for his and Cuddles' love fest. The second thing I decided to do was start playing with Cuddles in Dave's office. He likes to go in there to play. When I look at this picture of Cuddles here on my desk, you know, again, I could say, he does like me. I realized I needed to start telling myself the truth. He does come and visit me on occasion, and I need to choose activities to engage with him that he likes. He still may prefer Dave, but he doesn't completely ignore me. He does like me. He just shows it differently, right? You may also write, I need some intense cat therapy or to read cat books to learn too more about cats. So you can add on to the end. Maybe I need counseling. Maybe, like for example, when I was dealing with my codependency, I realized I don't know anything about boundaries. I don't know what a healthy boundary is. How do you tell the difference when you're giving a healthy boundary versus trying to manipulate somebody into doing something you want them to do? And what does that look like? So I wrote down, I had to go to counseling, and I read books on boundaries. And so, you know, that was part of my action plan that I added on to get myself help there. And after you're done, be sure to turn over your sheet and write down on the back good memories from that time in your life. Because if you can't think of one, then you can write a positive character asset about yourself. Something like, I'm smart, I did great in sports, I won awards. You need to write something positive, and you only need to write one thing. But something positive, because these sheets are going to be filled with past experiences that are going to be hard to look at, evaluate, or walk through. And if you just do one sheet like that after another sheet after that, like another sheet after that, pretty soon you're going to find yourself going to a hard, difficult, dark place. So you want to flip it over and make sure you do something positive on the back to help remind yourself, you have good qualities, you have good attributes, you have positive things that have happened to you in your life. So it's really important to balance that out by mentioning and making sure to flip it over and write something there. And that's going to help you balance out your focus from not only being on your hurts, habits, or hang-ups with something positive. All right, so there you go. We just walked through how to fill out each column. Hopefully that wasn't too painful and has given you the courage that you need to tackle these sheets. But let me tell you another reason why we do this, because this is the cool part of what happens when we work the plans on our inventory sheets. God gives us a testimony. God gives us a testimony, and I have one. I did start playing with Cuddles in the places he likes, and I decided just to accept the attention he wanted to give me when he did it. Dave accepted my apology, and our relationship has improved once I stopped blaming him for him and Cuddles' cat fest. And then I discovered after a while, and I don't know if it's because I was interacting with Cuddles differently or not, but now the cat won't leave me alone. He bugs me all the time. He jumps in my lap. He lays on me. He lets me pet him. He sleeps with me in my bed. And he literally follows me everywhere when I'm home now, which furthers my belief now that he does like me. So no more competition with Cuddles for Dave. It's all mine. But I do want to say my pain and suffering is not over. 2 years ago, someone abandoned a baby kitten here at the church. We came and got her and discovered she was barely 4 weeks old. Her name is Truffles, and here she is on this picture when we first got her. She was really cute at that time. We took her in and raised her, and at first she was really all about me. But over the past year, the only person she wants is Dave. If I try to pet her, she runs, literally. If I get close enough to catch her, she hisses at me. I mean, look at this, look at that. Does that look annoying? That's her sitting next to me. She literally, I get that look all the time. I never knew cats could be like have such an annoying look at people. I thought they did that with other cats. No kidding. I call it the wasp. She looks like she's about to attack me or sting me or something. I don't know. And so she literally wants nothing to do with me. And I thought Cuddles was bad, but this was a whole other level for me. But thankfully, since I have been working on my kitty rejection issues, I am way less affected. I admit in the beginning there was a few times I had to go through this change curve that I was get kind of jealous when I look over on the couch and see her laid out, sprawled across Dave. That's what I get to look at. And then if I scoot over and I try to pet her, I get the annoyed look. And then she leaves. She won't even, I get that look. I've tried to pet her when she's on Dave. Yes. Bunny, ha, 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 ha. But for a while now, I have decided she is allowed to prefer whoever she wants. I don't get to control the dumb cat. I'll continue to feed her.
Inventory sheet.
I'll continue to give her kitty crack like the other cats. And who knows, maybe one day she'll start treating me differently like Cuddles did. But in any case, I'm going to keep enjoying all the love I'm getting from Cuddles. And this is how our transformation begins. It starts with the small changes we can make and the messes we clean up with ourselves, God, and others. And then we get to write about it and encourage each other with about our new changes and outcomes when we do our testimonies afterwards. So I just want to make sure that even though you may not be able to complete thoroughly doing your inventory sheets at this moment, especially if you need to make amends or do the forgiveness process, finish it as well as you can in column 5. But you're going to need to come back and revisit these once we get to that lesson. You're going to have extra actionable steps to take. And you'll come back and revisit those sheets. So you just got to be patient. Don't jump ahead. And know we're going to help guide you through this whole process to do it as healthy as way as possible. And so make sure to go back and review those when it comes time. And so that we can just add in what you need to accomplish. And then you're going to see what God does. And even though, I just want to wrap up with saying, even though I made you these packets to take home with you tonight, I know some of you are more visual learners, so I will have this lesson up online in about a week. So if you'd rather come back and watch it, if you learn that way better than trying to read and do it, you can do that as well. It'll be on our CR page in about a week, like I said. So you can go back and watch it again if you need to. And if you have any questions, like I said, you can ask your sponsor. If they're unsure, they could ask me or Digger. We've been doing these for a really long time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and stand and say the Serenity Prayer so we can head off to share groups. God.